Back here on the Newsfeed PM, and thanks for staying on. Let's remain then a little bit with the focus on the taxi industry. The Western Cape High Court has granted an urgent interdict to the Western Cape Mobility Department following days of taxi violence. The violence is as a result of a dispute between Cata and Codeta taxi associations. The areas such as Mfuleni, Somerset West, Nomzamo and Lwandle have been affected by this. I'm joined now by Isaac Sileku, Western Cape Mobility MEC. MEC, good to have you and thank you very much for coming on this afternoon. It seems you as province, who of course are responsible for this particular sector and the mobility within the province, are lacking sufficient tools to enforce the rule of law. I mean, does this court judgment give you that kind of tool that you've been looking for?
Well, firstly, Tawa, thank you very much for inviting me. I wouldn't say that we are lacking laws or tools to deal with, issues in the minibus taxi industry. And I must say we have done a lot from the side of the province, to work with the minibus taxi industry. We've been supporting every effort of peace and stability within the taxi industry. But also one need to understand that the issues in the minibus taxi industry comes, for decades. And what we are trying to do is trying to change, how people perceive the industry. Because ultimately, we are not doing it for any operator or driver, but we are doing it for our commuters. Because if you look in terms of the numbers in our province, the majority of commuters that need to go to work, to school, to our healthcare service centers, highly depend on this mode of transport. And it is our responsibility from government to make sure that when they use these modes of transport, that they are safe and they're able to get back to their families. And what the interdict is actually saying is actually supporting the efforts from government in making sure that the intimidation stops, and also the interference of people of any mode of transport in our province also stops, and also that to remind them that they need to to adhere to the requirements of their operating licenses. Yeah. And also what is also encouraging the fact that within 3 days they need to get back to court, and put a plan and put in play a plan so that show how are they going to implement what the court wants from them.
Is the carrot and stick kind of approach, is it no longer working? For example, as MEC, you would have the power, for example, to close a particular taxi rank from operating should there be violence. You've put stringent more regulations around the operating license. Are all those interventions yielding any kind of results in ensuring that the players within the industry are cooperating? Because it seems this conflict is not necessarily between the government and the industry. It's between the industry players themselves that are seemingly not in agreement.
It is unfortunate when players, especially leaders, because we had a taxi peace summit in the province, and all leaders were there, both from Cata, Codeta, and primary associations. And, we were unanimous that we are sick and tired of violence, and we want peace. And it's unfortunate that we find ourselves in this dilemma. But from the side of the department, we are really we've just last night, I've issued a notice of the intent to close some of the lanes and operate and routes. That's what we need to do from our side as a department. And also, thirdly, what we are doing, the registrar is also using his own powers, to bring to order those associations that are affected to come in account for their misbehavior if they are found wanting, and then there will be sanctions. So there is measures in the side of government, and we are actually following those measures.
There is also a sense to some degree, MEC, that says 1 step forward, 2 steps back. So you would have a temporary solution for now, but 2 months down the line, we're going to have another kind of situation that is emerging. Is there a sense that there's something that can be put in place, more of a comprehensive, lasting solution to the conflicts?
No, firstly, I'm a firm believer that we can turn the tide, and we've identified some of the issues, and within ourselves, internally, we are trying to look, what is the long-term solution? What we are currently doing is to bring stability and make sure that our commuters are safe. And that's what we are doing. And also we need to look what is it that we can do in the medium term and to the long term. And while there are some issues that we have identified that is actually contributing to what is happening in the minibus taxi industry. And those are kind of issues we're saying within our own legislation, what is it that we can bring in, of course, with Santaco and working with everyone in the industry so that we can actually stop these killings. And if there's association, because we've also identified the fact that there's Codeta and Cata, and there's always, recruitment of primary associations to belong to these two bodies. And it's one of the reasons that it's actually causing conflict. And we need to deal with that. In the long term, we need to deal. How are we going to deal with the recruitment of associations to these organizations? Because it's actually contribute to what we are currently, experiencing.
Yeah. If you ask commuters, most of them, they'd say this is an industry that operates with fear, or if you like, with intimidation. I mean, the right to travel without fear is seemingly something that most commuters feel is not a right that they enjoy. So how closely do law enforcement agencies need to work with the community or the commuters themselves and this industry in order to ensure full compliance?
Now, firstly, everyone has a role to play, as commuters, as law enforcement agencies, as Cata, Codeta, Santaco, and even the law enforcement agencies. Because we cannot continue this way. If people intimidate us, then we must have a right as commuters to say we're not going to use that service. Because you cannot use a service where you're going to put your life at risk. And all of us must be able to come to a level and say, like, if you don't treat us with respect, if you don't value our lives, then we are not going to support your business. But ultimately, we're going to keep on trying and making sure that there is peace, there is stability. But ultimately, we as public, we as government must come to a level of saying, if you don't work with us, we are not going to work with you.
So right now you have a court interdict that at least up until the 9th of October guarantees what exactly and what needs to happen thereafter.
No, probably, when we're going to go, because we have to go back to court, and then in court, because we're going to determine whether we're going to make it permanent or not. And while we are waiting for that, we are also following our own processes of the notice that we have published yesterday, where we are saying, we've got an intent to close some of the lanes and routes. And if push comes to shove, we are going to close the rank. And they must come to us and tell us why we should not close it. But we cannot continue this way.
MEC, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. Isaac Sileku, Western Cape Mobility MEC there on the court interdict they got from the High Court that now gives them the ability to act decisively to protect commuters and curb violence in a deadly